Welcome to another episode of The Art of Feminine Negotiation. I'm your host, Cindy Watson, and I am thrilled to be introducing you today to Katherine Sellery. Welcome, Katherine. It's so great to have you here.
It is so great to be here, Cindy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking today about negotiating your best relationship with your kids. And for those of you who don't know Katherine Sellery, she's an internationally renowned parenting coach and a speaker. She's founder of the Conscious Parenting Revolution, and she has testimonials deservedly from around the world about the incredible results that she gets for her clients. And I can personally, frankly, attest to that because as many of you know, we were having a serious issue with one of our kids, and in a single conversation, we were in a pretty bad place, frankly, and it looked to be heading even further south. And in a single call, Katherine was able to give me insights that profoundly shifted the dynamic and got us on the road to recovery. So I really want to thank you for that as well, Katherine. It was amazing. And I just had to share with you so that you guys can benefit from her approach as well. Because if you want a framework to allow you to build the best relationship with your kids, to empower and uplift them, then you don't want to miss this. And the beauty of Katherine's model is that it's accessible. These are going to be simple but profound mindset shifts that'll change how you show up so you can be the best version of yourself as an inspired, inspiring, and present parent. So, Katherine, I thought we'd start. Why don't you tell us a bit about your background? Because I know your family history, your personal family history, informs how and why you started on this journey. I'd love to hear about that if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Cindy. So I think all of our stories inform what we do, how we show up, and where we're drawn.
Yep, I can attest to that.
Yeah, right. And I have a little thing on my desk. I'm going to actually show it to your audience. And it's a little roomy. Can you read that or not?
What you seek is seeking you. I love that.
Yeah. So, it inspires me because I know that, what I seek is seeking me. And so I think it's been my whole life of, making sense of my internal world.
Yeah.
Making sense of my internal world, what's going on inside of me that is up until, I would say, it's a journey, but a lot of times I would look to find that thing outside of me to shift or to change, or a person, whether it's to rescue me or whatever it may be, that's going to make this feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's women especially on that. We tend to be much more externally driven in terms of our sense of self-worth, as opposed to males who are a little more internally driven. So I love that you're touching on this.
Yeah, I actually spend a huge part of my program talking about internal versus external locus of causality, and that's such a big word. But anyway, it's like, basically, am I feeling better about myself based on what I do?
Yeah.
Is it something about somebody else's perspective of me that makes me feel good about me?
Yeah.
I think that everybody grows up in a world where they are cultivated to think that what mom feels about me makes me feel good or bad about myself.
Yeah.
What my teacher feels about me makes me feel good or bad about myself. It's this whole idea of it's what other people think of me that informs how I feel about me.
Yeah, such a dangerous model.
Incredibly dangerous model. And it's certainly the one I grew up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, what has been my journey is even knowing how to talk about this with this sort of a framework, to be able to talk about the issues of my inner world, my inner healing, and knowing that, because of my journey, I have learned a little something about family systems and the cultures we cultivate in them that either create children having a really deep, solid sense of self, or no idea about who they are.
Yeah.
And, a good codependent can tell you about everybody in the room, what they're feeling and what they're needing. And you ask them about themselves and there's just a blank look on their face, like, how am I feeling?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's interesting to me, women in particular, I find that's the case, right? Like often when I'm doing workshops as well, even something as simple as asking women, let me know, what are your goals and your visions and your dreams? And at live events, you see at least half the room are sitting there with their little Women on Purpose journals, shell shocked, like literally don't even know where to start for their own vision and goals and dreams. So this is such an important issue.
It's so important.
And can
Yeah.
you share with us some things you talked about, that sense of self, and that's so important. So I'd love share some of the things that think most of us are maybe likely doing as parents that will affect our child's self-esteem, and maybe some tips about how we can do better on that front.
I think that whenever we say to our children, I can't believe it, you make me feel so blah, 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 blah. Whenever we use those words, you make me feel blah, 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 we are blaming our children for our feelings.
Yeah.
And so is it any wonder when we hear our children say to their brother, their sister, to somebody at school, he made me so mad.
I knew that was coming. Yeah, it's so true.
Because we've taught them that other people make us mad.
Yeah.
Other people make us sad. Other people make us this. Other people make us that. In which case, everything about me is determined by something outside of me. We're, circling back to that world again of, I am not responsible for my feelings. Other people are. They make me feel. And the reality is that other people catalyze feelings in us. What they do or don't do either creates this explosion inside or that explosion inside, this experience or that experience. Marshall Rosenberg is one of my teachers, and he would say, we need to learn how to differentiate between the catalyst and the cause of what we feel.
Yeah. He's the nonviolent communication guy, right? Marshall Rosenberg?
He is the nonviolent. He was the founder of the Center for Nonviolent Communication.
I love that.
One of my teachers who, really sitting at the foot of a Marshall Rosenberg in this lifetime is just a gift. A huge gift.
Yeah.
And so, for people in your audience who are also followers of Marshall Rosenberg, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so authentic, so real, and having the bandwidth to explain our sense of self to ourselves.
Yeah.
So, this would be like one of the most important things any of us ever learn in a lifetime. And it's not like you just check the box.
Yeah.
You check the box each and every time you want to blame somebody. I'll just talk about me. I get to go back to, wow, I really want to say that this person and what they did or didn't do is responsible for what's going on inside of me right now.
Yeah.
And if I could only get them to change,
if
I could only get them to do this, if I could only get them to do that, I would feel so much better.
Yeah.
And, there's a relationship to all of it.
Yeah.
There's a truth about that, because we do have a relationship to the outer world, and the inner and the outer dance is always unfolding. So when someone's behaving in a certain way, it either is catalyzing that my needs are being met, or it may be catalyzing my needs are not being met. And if my needs aren't met, I have certain feelings. And if my needs are met, I have certain feelings. And so, yes, of course, the feeling world is relating to whether my needs are met or not. But that extra step of being able to go into, oh, wow, well, no wonder I feel this way.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't feel this way?
Yeah.
My needs for connection have just been, destroyed.
Yeah.
And so therefore, I have that deep sense of yearning inside, or sadness inside. And when I tune into what I needed, I have more choice about how I'm going to meet the needs.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that idea of causality as well. And for me, it was a slow lesson coming, and it was a game changer when it hit. And it's funny because Marshall was so ahead of the curve on that. Now it's so much more well established and recognized, this idea about the fact that we may not be able to control what happens in the world. We can't control what other people do, but we sure as heck can learn to control how we choose to show up, how we choose to react, what meaning we attach to what people are saying as well. So I love this idea about separating that causality.
Yeah. And when you give your children this dialogue, this conversation, this narrative, I have 2 children, and I can remember when my daughter was little, she would literally be sitting around the kitchen table with her girlfriends saying, you know, you can't blame somebody else for how you feel. And there would be these huge conversations,
Wow.
you know, because nobody believed it.
Yeah.
Nobody believed it. And I mean, obviously, you know, we can extrapolate that onto the world stage where we are really still playing this game.
Absolutely.
And it's not just the six-year-old girls at my kitchen table who were having this conversation about, is that true?
Yeah.
Are you sure? You know? And really this whole idea that it's everybody who's struggling with finding that the truth of the nobody makes me feel, Marshall would say, nobody makes me feel. He would also say things like, what you think about me is none of my business.
Yeah.
So there's truth in both of those. At the same time, we know there's an interdependence and that we do need each other.
Yeah.
And there's a legitimate, healthy need. And then, of course, the need that a lot of us know is the need that we grew up with, which was an unhealthy need, a neediness.
Yeah.
And that's back to, you know, if this person would just let me into their group, you know, I'll feel like I belong. And for children, it a lot of times is about, you know, what do I have to do to get into the coveted in group?
Yeah.
If I could just figure that out, I'm sure I'm going to rock this.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, what is the magic formula to get into that group?
Yeah.
Where I think I'm going to feel like I belong. Because we know that belonging is as fundamental as breathing.
Yeah.
In terms of our needs, our legitimate needs. There's no way around it. And yet we know that we never grew up in families. I'm going to say that this way because I don't know of many, maybe there's one or two out there, where we were encouraged to be connected to what we were feeling and to be able to describe what we were feeling to ourselves and others from a non-blameful place, but just from the place of, wow, when that happened, this is what I experienced inside. And to say that without blaming the other person for it is, I think, so nuanced and so unusual.
I love that. And you've actually cut sort of a cross-generational thing that you're touching on now as well. Because speaking for myself, like certainly my generation and upbringing, it was that stiff upper lip, right? And I mean, gosh, it took years to unpackage that, you know, you don't cry, you don't show emotion, you don't show vulnerability. People will take advantage. So you're quite right. We weren't encouraged to express our feelings at all, let alone vis-a-vis the relationship between owning our own feelings as opposed to blaming somebody else for it. So I love that idea.
Exactly. I just don't think any of us grew up equipped to know how to navigate our inner worlds or even have those around us making us aware of our inner worlds.
Yeah.
I know that, you know, for my family of origin, it was making me aware of other people's inner worlds or outer expressions, that it was really a lot about other people.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
It was a lot about other people. And you know, I think that, I mean, Alice Miller, I can't help but talk about her. And she talks about the poisonous pedagogy, and that when you are raised in families where what will the neighbors think, don't rock the boat, how to be socially poised and presented, and that is good behavior. Yeah. And you're growing up with good parenting if your children are well behaved.
Yes.
It means that they don't embarrass you.
Yep.
That they impress other people, that they make you proud.
Yeah, be seen and not heard, even at the extreme. And it's so funny. This is so timely. I've just started watching The Crown. I know I'm like 4 seasons behind, but so much of that comes from that stiff upper lip, be proper. Everything is about how people perceive you, right? So very interesting.
Yeah, and that other people's experiences of you will either make your parents embarrassed, humiliated, or proud.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful.
And so we're gaming to try to get that that child to be that person with the thought, I think, that will be good for them.
Yeah. So what are some tips you would give for the parents out there listening about what can they do to help improve that self-esteem? Obviously, one is having that dialogue about that external versus internal. What other tips would you give about things that they can or maybe ought not to do, the do's and don'ts in terms of how you affect your kids' self-esteem?
Yeah, so I run a course, the 90-day parenting reset, and we're just now, right now, I'm about 3 or 4 weeks into it, and I had a couple coaching calls yesterday, and this is the topic we're on right now.
Okay.
And one of the parents was saying on the call, I've been really teaching my child, the words for those things that happen inside of him.
Yeah.
So that's part of it, is teaching your child the words, to be able to know that this word is the word for this.
Yeah.
This is anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
This is frustration. This is worry. This is anger. To know the word, because it's all a little different.
Yeah.
And the greater your vocabulary, the more ways you can describe to yourself what's happening. And that, of course, is the core of resilience. And it allows people to self-regulate.
Yeah.
So it's good if we can be, like cleaning ourselves in and out every day and have the words to be able to describe things to ourselves, let alone others.
Yeah.
But if I have an inner dialogue where I can identify what I'm feeling, then the next step is to have the words around what I'm needing, which is different than what I'm wanting. So really, all of these distinctions are huge.
Yeah.
Name it to tame it. A lot of people have heard that, but I need the names.
Yeah. I love that, actually.
Very practical. I need the
that.
names. And, Brene Brown, my hero, many people's hero. I mean, she's actually created a list of 30 words that everyone needs. It's emotional granularity. And the research shows that most people have 3 words. That's it.
It's terrible.
To describe their inner experiences.
Yeah.
Very much, inadequate.
Yeah.
So one of the things we do is we've got to teach our kids the words to describe their inner world.
Nice.
So that they can experience it, know how to name it, to tame it, and describe it to someone else. And we need to learn too. So that
Are you a fan of emotional wheels for that, Katherine?
I don't. I actually encourage them to take the word and put it on a piece of paper, because everybody experiences emotion different on their face.
Yeah.
So, have a little piece of paper that says anxious.
Okay.
And, another one that says frustrated.
Yeah.
And another one that says, and then you take a picture of your child showing you their face.
Yeah.
When they're frustrated or when they're irritated or, whatever it is, because it shows up differently on everybody. And then you make a deck of cards out of it.
Cool. I've never heard that before. I love that.
And then they have the deck. And with the deck of cards, when they're really upset and they can't find their words, you throw the deck out on the table and say, just point to it.
Yeah. And what age would you suggest starting that at?
I think you can start really early.
Yeah.
Really early.
Okay.
So the earlier, the better. And one of the little kids of a parent in my program, he's 7, said to the mom and dad who were arguing, she said on the call yesterday, he said, I'm working really hard on myself right now. And I think, you guys could do that too, from a place of wanting to really help them out.
I love that. Oh my gosh, how adorable. What a great sign that it's working.
I'm working so hard on myself, he says. He's 7.
That's beautiful.
Oh, God, I love it. Yeah, it brings tears to my eyes.
Tapped into something, because you've mentioned anxiety and anxiousness a couple of times. And I got to say, there's a lot of worry right now. Suicide rates are at all-time highs, and depression and anxiety as well across ages and cultures. What insight do you have to share about why that is, but also offering maybe some tips on how we can shift this trend, starting with our parenting and creating psychological safety in the home?
Right. Beautiful. Well, I do think that, COVID, I'm going to, use the C word, that has come at a huge price to people's mental health.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that with the, being at home, a lot of people are still homeschooling. A lot of kids are anxious about going back to school. They're worried about getting sick and dying. Yeah. There's been so much press about it, and that, kids are just really scared.
Yeah.
And so recognize it's real, that what they're going through is real. And again, I think it really, what helps everybody is not to be told, oh, don't worry about it, you're in the low risk group.
Yeah.
So, marginalizing people's feelings, trying to tell them that they shouldn't feel the way they do because they're in a low risk group.
Yeah.
We have all of these ways that we want to help our children feel better. And the least effective is the one where we try to get them not to feel what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And we of course want the shift to happen around what they're feeling, but it doesn't happen by denying the feeling. It happens by acknowledging it.
Yeah. Yeah. And not only in that moment, but the long-term impact of teaching our kids to suppress and push down those feelings is devastating. Yeah.
Yes. So really being with them, but having the ability to do something here, I'm going to give you one of the tips, is to be able to reframe it around this beautiful work called focusing. And in that world, we would create more distance between your sense of self and what you're feeling. So really being the observer of the feeling, something in you. So you could say back to your child, sounds like something in you is anxious. And then all of a sudden you might even see the child kind of just doing a little bit of this because they thought they were the anxiousness.
Yeah.
They had identified with the feeling. So the ability to be bigger than what's bugging you, the ability to turn toward, there is something in me that's really anxious.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then you as the parent can say, let's just be with that.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm being with that anxious part of me. I'm not denying it. I'm not pretending it's not there. I'm also not identified with it, but I'm being with it in a way that allows it to know that I can accept it.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Just the way it is. And when I'm with it in that way, then being with it, I go, okay, right. There is that part of me. Yeah. And now it's a part of me. And, the more that I'm able to be with it, then I can be with it and not let it become all of me.
Yeah.
So, they say with anxiety that everybody experiences being anxious. And the problem is when the anxiousness becomes an impediment to living my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And it's
so when I stop going out.
Yeah.
When I stop going out, or I stop going to school, or if I'm anxious about being in groups because I'm afraid I don't know how to connect, and so I just stop going to them.
Yeah.
Then it's no longer just anxiety. It's anxiety that's got in the way of you living.
Yeah.
And that would become more of something that you would want to go deeper into with professional support, because now it could be in the world of anxiety disorders, which is different than just garden variety anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I like that idea about being with it. It sounds a lot to me like the peace process, right? Which is a valuable tool. I mean, a lot of the major healers in the world today use that kind of version of the peace process. And the first step is just identify where you're feeling, whatever that feeling is, whether it's anxiousness or anger or fear or whatever, but being with the feeling and actually get really specific about identifying where it is in your body and not fighting against it, not resisting, because what we resist persists, but just allowing ourselves to be with it, to recognize it, and allow the body to process it, and then it can dissipate more naturally. So I love that.
Yeah. So, that's I actually wasn't familiar with this peace process, but what I can say is that in the focusing, yes, you are saying, I'm sensing something in me is anxious. And then the next thing would be, if you can sense into where that is in your body, where do you feel it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I do. I feel it right here in the center of your chest.
Yeah.
And, as you're being with it and sensing it, tell me more about it. Like, what color is it? Is it fuzzy? Is it, and you're using a lot of adjectives to describe this thing. And as you're beginning to just be the observer and sensing into the colors or the sense of it or the feel of it, or, yes, it's moving. Now I feel it in the center of my throat, or, you actually physically are having a relationship to this energy.
Yep. I love that. That's beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks
It's
for
really
that.
beautiful.
And talk a bit more about the psychological safety aspect. I know you speak a lot about that and the importance of it. And I think it's language we never were taught about parenting, to be honest. So I think it's been pretty conspicuously absent. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, that's so good. Conspicuously absent. So, when somebody says, my child's lying to me, then what that reveals is that this child doesn't feel it's safe to tell you the truth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's really what lying is. It's not a bad kid, it's a symptom.
Do me a favor, say that again. I think that's so important. Repeat that, because I think as parents, we don't take ownership of that at all. We definitely blame and lay that at the feet of our kids. So I'd like you to repeat that, and for our listeners out there, this is one of those write them down insights.
Yeah, this is a write them down. So when somebody says my child's lying to me, I respond by saying, so what are you doing that's preventing your child from feeling that they can tell you the truth?
Yeah.
If you've created a family system where telling you the truth is unacceptable, then I won't.
Yeah.
I've learned it's dangerous to tell you the truth. I can tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
Anything outside of the realm of what you want to hear, I can't tell you. I'll hide it from you because you actually want me to hide it.
Yeah. And I bet there's a lot of parents out there right now taking a moment as they fully absorb that. That's a biggie. That's a big mindset shift.
Absolutely. I mean, I would just withhold the truth. I would withhold the truth and probably, I would say, if I look back on my life, was I the type who would give a bold-faced lie? I was more likely just not to say anything.
Yeah.
And therefore, it was more or less the same thing as not giving my perspective. I learned to do that.
Yeah.
I learned to do that. I learned that in order to keep the peace and not rock the boat, the way to keep myself safe was to just not say something.
Yeah. Totally.
And let things be the way they were, because I knew that if I spoke up, I would trigger you. And so I don't want to trigger you, because you live in the world where when you're triggered, you blame the trigger.
Yeah.
As opposed to recognizing that I just touched into that goal, that mine inside that's been waiting for somebody to step on it and boom, right?
Yeah.
And so, I've learned so much about this. My family of origin taught me so many things. And what I learned was that these landmines were something that we learned to negotiate around.
Yeah.
Some people in my family didn't. And I look back now completely differently. Those were called the troublemakers.
Yeah.
Those were the black sheep in the family.
Yeah.
Those were the ones who didn't do what they were supposed to.
Yeah.
And they found their voices, even though it was dangerous.
Yeah.
And I look back and I think, wow,
yeah,
I see you so differently in the story than I did growing up with you, where you were the one who would make mom mad.
Yeah.
You were the one who would make dad mad.
Yeah.
And so I was the youngest of 5. I learned how not to make people mad.
Yeah.
And it meant swallowing my own voice.
Absolutely.
It meant swallowing my own sense of self in it.
Yeah.
I talked about Alice Miller earlier, but she has a book called The Drama of the Gifted Child. The giftedness of the child that she speaks to is the one that is so gifted that they know how to keep themselves safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what she talks about in terms of the safety is that, yes, you had to lose yourself in order to stay safe in that family system. And look how it protected you.
Yeah.
Now that's a good positive spin on it.
Yeah.
And the other way of looking at it is, wow, I had to lose myself and it's taken a long time to find her again.
Yeah. And what a beautiful insight shift you had. I love that you being able now, your adult self, with all of this new sort of knowledge and understanding, to be able to look at your siblings in a different way and see the strength that they had, that bravery that they had to be able to speak their voice and their truth at a time and in an environment where it wasn't encouraged at all, quite the opposite. So
absolutely. And I do, I look back and I say, wow,
yeah,
wow, you were prepared to risk disapproval.
yeah,
You were prepared to risk disapproval. And I was the good girl.
yeah. Yeah, I get that. That really resonates, and I'm sure it does with a lot of our listeners. So what are some things you can do to create that psychological safety other than not being the landmine, which I love that analogy.
Yeah, well, you can't be the landmine. And, and I really want to call this out too, because I'm imagining a lot of people are landmines out there and they've been blowing up at their kids and so forth and so on. Just say, this is not about self-blame. This is not about now feeling ashamed or guilty.
I'm glad you said that.
It's not the road here.
Yeah.
This is the road to redemption.
I love it.
This is not the road to self-shaming.
Yeah, we beat ourselves up enough.
Yeah, that's the last thing we need. And everybody's inner child at this point is probably freaking out. And so I start with that. Because I can look back on my own journey and I can tell you there are so many times when I wish I had had more self-awareness around how I showed up. And you have what you have at the time. It's just the way it is. It's not good, bad, right, wrong. It's just the reality. And sure, I can look back and think, oh my goodness, I wish I had been more grounded. I wish I had been more centered. I wish I even knew what those words meant back then. My relationship to words like being grounded and being centered also change all the time as I experience them differently, as I have a different type of practice that gives me a different type of sense of self, grounded into the depths of the earth where, you become the unshakable branch and then the tree, and, the foundation gets stronger and different. And it is what it is. The journey is what it is. And at the times when I was losing it spectacularly are the opportunities for me to have a ton of self-empathy.
Yeah. I'm so glad you've addressed this. First, I love your analogy about the tree. That is gorgeous, very literary. I love it. Thank you. But I'm really glad you touched on this idea about that self-compassion as well, because again, as women, we have such a tendency already to beat ourselves up and to look back. Our only road to success is through the failures, right? So recognizing them as gifts and opportunities. I actually encourage my clients to have what I call fail-abrations. Like every time there's been a failure, celebrate it and recognize what's the gift I can take away from this. What's the learning? Because we are perfectly imperfect in our humanity, and that's our beauty, is being able to learn from that. So I'm so glad you spoke to that, Katherine. Thank you for that.
I love that fail-abration.
Yeah, it's cute, right?
That, and I'm going to take that forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for that. But yeah, we all know it's from our failures that we actually grow.
Yeah. That
each and every, so-called failure is an opportunity for growth. And, it makes me laugh because we all know it's all we think about.
Yeah.
Right? You really can have people talk to you in the best of ways. And it's that one thing that, I really wanted to talk about this. And that's all that we focus on. And then there's this sense of, oh my God, and that ties back into this whole culture of perfection.
Yes. Yeah.
Why your fail-abration is so powerful is because of our culture of perfection.
Yeah.
So, we try to perfect ourselves and our children, and the list goes on. And some of us get triggered by our own failings. Yeah. Because we grew up in worlds where that wasn't okay. I mean, I don't know. I'm imagining everybody on the call and you and I are touching into, those failings, which may still have a little bit of a pull to them, right?
Yes. Oh, think of the generational difference. I remember growing up, with my parents, I was always that striver for those straight A's, right? And you'd come home with like a 96% in something, and my dad would go, "What happened to the other 4?" So that definite kind of, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
Catherine,
So
the mind,
that's,
mind. I'd love if you could speak to, because we all do have those landmine moments, right? And what are your thoughts about how to debrief that with you? When we've had those moments, how do you create that psychological safety by using that and being open and vulnerable enough to talk to your kids about it? And what insights do you have about that?
Yes. So being triggered or being with someone who's triggered, both exist. So, where I want to go first is a recent conversation I was having in the last few months with my daughter. And it was charged, and she was so upset with me. And I was able to stay centered.
Nice.
I didn't take it personally.
Yeah.
I knew that this was about something in her. And I was able to be with her in a way that allowed her the space to fall apart socially unacceptably and even say things to me about me that were not what I agreed with.
Yeah.
But I could see at the moment it's how she felt.
Yeah.
And so I think these are the tips. The tips are to recognize when someone else is triggered, it's not really about you.
Love it.
Even if your name is on it.
So important.
That and being triggered, by definition, my definition, the work that I do in triggered world is that it's not just a reaction, it's the overreaction.
Yeah.
It's a disproportionate response to a situation. So situations where you're reacting, it's appropriate to react. And depending on what the situation, you can imagine the different ways of reacting. Triggered is when it's disproportionate. Mm-hmm. It's way over the top. And that's when you go, okay, hold on, wait a minute. This actually isn't even about me anymore.
Yeah. And
so I've been in various situations, of course, throughout my life, as we all have, where either I'm the one who is disproportionately in an overreaction or someone else is.
Yeah.
And in both cases, when you're in that state, that frenzy, it is manipulative, it is abusive.
Yeah.
So again, knowing that I'm the one who's being manipulative and abusive, or the other is being manipulative and abusive, when they're in this state, it gives me a context. So all manipulations are goal-oriented. Our goal is to get the other person to do what we want them to do, to bend to us, to essentially deny what's going on within them, and instead be focused on what's going on within me.
Yeah, beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's like it in a bit of a nutshell. So it's a practice. It's a practice. We're not going to not get triggered anymore. And other people are not going to all of a sudden not be triggered anymore.
Yeah.
No. Right.
So I was just saying that I love this idea about, and it's a bit of a slap in the face for us to recognize, but seeing our own landmine triggering behavior as being manipulative, and it's not always conscious, but that doesn't make it any less manipulative or goal-oriented. And I think that's a great eye-opener for people to recognize that when you have these blow-ups with your kids, that's a form of manipulation and abuse. When you say,
for sure.
Just took my breath away, because it's like holding up that mirror and not liking what you see, which can be a great way to get.
Yeah. And so again, we're back in the world of, this is not about shaming yourself because you get triggered, because we all get triggered.
Yeah.
So that's not the lesson here. The lesson is to recognize, oh, wow.
Yeah.
There's something in me that is so tender and raw and we know the people closest to us trigger us, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And, so it's usually our family members, our best friends, the people that know us the closest, the deepest, with whom we have, really heartfelt relationships. Strangers are harder to, get under our skin. Mm-hmm. But our inner circle are magic at it.
Yeah. But even strangers, you really hit on something important as well when you talked about that. When something is personalized, and I loved when you talked about, and thank you for sharing your exchange with your daughter, and congrats to you. And it's a testament to you that you're being able to keep your grace and recognize this isn't personal, because we have been conditioned to be so reactive whenever anything is personalized. And I think it goes back to the point you were making at the very beginning about that need to belong, right? And judging ourselves based on that external validation. So
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in that particular situation, I could stay centered, which meant that I would be able to say back to her, I can see you are so upset with me, and that this has really, really hurt you. And I can see how, because you're looking at it this way, you're feeling so hurt.
Yeah.
And, I don't see it this way. I know that this is how you see it, that this is what you think I was thinking about so-and-so, and I'm not. And I know it's hard for you to hear that right now because you're so mad at me, but at some point, I want you to understand that that's not what's going on for me.
Nice. Beautiful.
So that could only happen because I wasn't defending myself.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the land of, how dare you?
Yeah.
Because when you go into the how dare you land, you create disconnection.
Absolutely. Well, and that was the piece, and I'm happy to share here with the listeners as well. That little nugget was so profound for me. And obviously you went a little deeper with me in it, but my son was in the hospital. We were in a terrible situation all round. And for him, and Katherine had said to me, okay, your next exchange with him needs to be, you have to absolutely let go of any desire to defend yourself and just be fully present to listening. And not only listening, but first start by expressing that you appreciate his situation from his perspective. And it was such a game changer, showing up at that hospital for that next visit, being able to bite my tongue because he was resistant and saying things that were very personalized, and being able to just let go of that and totally be present with him and his feelings and not feeling that need to defend myself was such a game changer. And this might lead in naturally as well, Katherine, to you. I know you speak a lot about the importance of modeling collaboration, and this, I see this as sort of a form of that. So can you explain sort of what does that look like and why is it so important?
Yeah, well, there's solo problem solving.
Nice.
And solo problem solving is so ineffective. It's me saying, this is how we're going to solve the problem. And everybody's going to just follow along because I said it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't usually work.
Guilty as charged.
Guilty as charged. We're all guilty as charged. And we can all look back probably, and I hope with huge smiles on our faces, going, oh yeah, I did a solo problem solve there. Boy, that didn't work out.
I love that term. That's so good. Solo problem solve. I got to use that. That is hilarious.
So good, right?
Yes.
So you can choose. You can do the solo thing and, go ahead, play it out, see how it works out for you. Or you can go into collaborative problem solving where it really is collaborative. Yeah. And so that doesn't result in the same things as solo problem solving. It actually opens up different results. Yeah. And so, I'm kind of chuckling about one of the spectacular solo problem solves I had in my life. And I can remember making my daughter go to a dinner that she didn't want to go to. She wanted to go earlier in the day and she was a yes. And then later, as it was getting closer to the time to leave, she was a no. And I wasn't okay with her no. So I made her go. Yep. And when we were there, she did this the whole time. Yeah. And one of my friends looked at me and she said, did you make her come?
Oh, been there. Yeah.
And I was like, is it that obvious? Yeah. So yeah, we can use our power over because we have it. Yeah. And we can make them do what we want. And every single time we pay for it. Yeah. Every single time. Sometimes you pay for it immediately, but sometimes the resentment flow kicks you in the ass a little later. Yeah. So, the resentment flow is there. And when it's going to show up, it's harder to say. Some kids instantly, like my daughter, oh yeah, sure, you can make me, Mom. And, I'm just going to do this through the whole thing. I'm not going to behave the way you want me to. You can't manipulate me. You can't
Yes.
be a little puppeteer. And so, that happened.
Yeah.
So the collaborative problem solved would have been for me to have said to her, I'm so disappointed. I was really looking forward. And I understand that over the course of the day, you've gone from a yes to a no. And she would be able to just be like, I know, I really was looking forward to it too. And Mom, I just don't have it in me. I'm so sorry. And then I could deal with my own disappointment. And I could acknowledge that I saw what was going on for her and that I honored her as being separate and individuated from me. And that she wasn't there to just please me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I love that ties in when you did with the cell phone. I saw it reminded me of, I know you speak a lot about the 3 R's as well. And in particular, one of our big challenges as parents is pushing against our kids' attempts for independence and independent decision making. So if you can quickly share your theory on the 3 R's and maybe how to eliminate them, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. So, retaliation, rebellion, and resistance, those are the 3 R's. And when we use a controlling form of discipline, we activate the 3 R's. And then what we know from the ongoing research is that these 3 R's are so much a part of our disruptive behaviors. They actually represent 75% of our problems.
Wow.
So what that means is that when you have your initial situation here, if you solve that, like I did, let's use the dinner thing. If you solve that disruptive problem by making somebody do something, using your power and control, you then activate the retaliation, the rebellion, and the resistance, which I did almost instantly. So I created my daughter and how she was at the table that night.
Yeah.
I planted the seeds and I reaped my own harvest.
Yeah. Yes.
Done and dusted. Guilty as charged.
Yeah.
And I know that that's a harvest that I reaped based on the seeds I sowed.
Beautiful.
So this is where we really get, and this is where a lot of the people that come into the programs I run are that they're focusing on one of the R's. They don't like the fact that their child is retaliating, rebelling, or resisting.
Yeah.
And they're coming because there's something wrong with their child. We want to get into this course so that we can figure out how to get them to behave better.
Yeah. I love it.
And what they learn is that this is the harvest that you reap when you deal with problems like this in this way. You activate the 3 R's and then you spend most of your time dealing with it. It's the problem. So the solution is to have the collaborative problem solving model as opposed to the I have power over and I know how to use it model. And so we use that instead. And therefore we eliminate the 3 R's and we don't have the child retaliating, rebelling, and resisting because there is no thing to retaliate against or rebel against or resist because everybody's needs matter. So when they start to exercise volition, when they start to live into their autonomy, we don't see it as rebelliousness and we don't see it as disrespectful. We recognize that it does cause within us something to be activated and that, maybe it would be better if they were people pleasers and that they wanted just to please me.
Yes.
Guilty as charged, it would be great if you wanted to do that. And the reality is that I want to celebrate the fact that you're not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And thank you for digging a little deeper on that. I really wanted you to explain because I love the 3 R's and especially for the reasons you talked about earlier, that in particular, our generation was taught that, kids were meant to behave and to be seen and not heard, and it reflected on the parents. So when we see those 3 R's, it triggers for us that we're being a bad parent, and the opposite is true. And a friend of mine, I know whenever she struggles with her daughter, it's easy to see in other people, less so herself, but she would complain about the 3 R's. She didn't characterize it as that. And I would say to her, it triggered from what you just said, these are the things that you are going to be so proud of and love about your daughter when she goes out in the world. The things that are driving you crazy right now are the very things that are going to make you so proud of her to be able to stand on her own 2 feet, right? So I love
So
that.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have, this webinar I did on the 3 common mistakes that parents make. And one of the things that I talk about in that is that autonomy needs, when they're exercised by children, are seen as disrespectful.
Yeah.
And so young children, we hold beliefs about them. And not just young children. Maybe it's a child up until the age of agency, I don't know, 18, 21, depending on your jurisdiction, that those are children that should be cooperative, and that whenever they're not, they're being disrespectful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, a shift around children's autonomy needs and seeing it as autonomous as opposed to disrespectful, because it has nothing to do with being respected.
Yeah.
If anything, the child is trying to respect themselves.
I love that.
And don't know how to do that and say yes to you.
Yeah.
So it really is a struggle between, how do I stay connected to myself and connected to you?
Yeah.
How do I do that? I mean, frankly, it's complicated.
Yeah.
And, we're all just learning how to do that. And, I just want to throw this in, because I think that this is a part that we haven't really talked about, which is that, all of us carry our inner wounding. And when we are carrying out our lives as adults, there's still parts of us that are not healed.
Yeah.
And our children are designed to bring those to the surface.
Yeah. I love that. That's so true.
And that is, they are our teachers.
Yeah.
And in many ways, they're our healers.
Yes.
Because they bring our areas that have not been healed yet to the surface.
Yeah.
So our best friends can do it.
Yeah.
Our partners are good at it too.
Yeah.
So there's that inner circle that come into our lives to really go deep and pop out those things that we are not looking at. And the ability to be with those things and not merged with those things is not easy. Yeah. Because those are very deep and have strong emotional currents.
Yeah.
And so those strong emotional currents are hard not to merge with.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that shift of seeing our kids as our teachers, as people that we can learn from. And also that shift, that when I say shift, that mindset shift for us as parents about seeing our kids, they're not disrespecting us. They're trying to respect themselves. I love that. And I really invite everybody, this is the kind of podcast you want to go back and listen to again. There's so many mindset shifts here, any one of which can be a game changer in your relationship. Yeah. And you mentioned, Katherine, about your webinar, and I want to let all of our listeners know that Katherine is offering, she's got this free webinar that our listeners can jump on, and it's 3 common mistakes parents make and how to reverse them. So, and I'm going to be putting the link for that so you can access it in our show notes. So everybody do make sure to check out that webinar, and just tell us a little bit about what they can expect from that, Katherine.
Yeah. So it's looking at these mistakes, the common mistakes, the mistakes around autonomy and our relationship to the autonomous nature of a child. And, it just brings out some of the super common mistakes that we make. Honestly, if we didn't make these 3 mistakes, it would change your life.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So they're common mistakes that are not necessarily so easy to change. Our relationship to our children's autonomy is a work in progress.
Yeah.
I'm doing it for decades. And every time I experience it, I thankfully have a lot of support internally to get me through it.
Yes. Beautiful.
So that I can work with all the different parts of me that are activated by it.
Yeah. Gorgeous.
And that's the key, right? Is to begin to realize that what's activated in me, I get to spend time with that.
Yeah.
And that's the shift. Rather than trying to get them to not be the way they are,
yeah,
I get to start working within me around the things that come up for me when this is catalyzed.
Yeah, beautiful. So everybody make sure to check out, like I say, that link is going to be in the show notes. You can't miss it. And I agree with you, Katherine. If you think how different, for all the listeners out there, your relationship with your kids can be, and this transcends beyond your relationship with your kids, frankly.
Oh, yeah.
Very least with your kids, if you just raised your awareness about these 3 most common mistakes and what you can do to change them. And I know, Katherine, you've also generously offered a free ebook as a gift to our listeners. So why don't you tell us a bit about that? And again, I'll make sure to leave the link so you can directly access that in our show notes too for our listeners out there.
Yeah, so the website, my website is consciousparentingrevolution.com, and people can go there to get the free ebook, log into the webinar. And I've got tons of blogs. I mean, there's a lot of content there that people can begin to digest to support them on their parenting journey. But, these are 7 strategies that can help you from, your relationship with your kids exploding. And so these are different strategies, again, that are going to be able to give you that collaborative problem solving model that we were talking about when you're ready to start shifting away from, I'm in charge because I said so.
Yeah.
And into, okay, all right, you do exist. You're there. You're over on the other side of the table from me. Yeah. There's something in you that doesn't want to do this, whatever it may be. Homework, turn the TV off, no more screen time, transition to this, that, or the other thing. All of the things that happen in our lives, like, we need some strategies around that.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. What a gift. So everybody, again, that's 2 great resources at a minimum that you're going to get. Following up, grab the links in the show notes on that. And I can't believe how fast this time has gone, Katherine. My gosh, I feel like we could take another hour easily.
We could go for so much longer. It's been
forever.
really
This has been
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, what is one of the greatest mindset shifts that you've had in your life, whether around parenting, about this subject, or generally? What would you say is one of the greatest mindset shifts that you would like to share?
Mm-hmm. Greatest mindset shifts. I think that, one of the ones that has supported me, we kind of touched on it here today, is recognizing that when I have been merged with those really strong emotions, that from that place, that's a part of me that's, the part that's working out something.
Mm-hmm.
Any solutions that come from that place will fail.
Mm. Wow. Powerful. Powerful.
Because it's not who I am.
Yeah.
It's usually that part that's, really aching. And its solutions are usually based in, kind of codependent stuff.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And
Wow.
it's a very young part. And from that really young part that's scrambling. And as I said earlier, when we're merged with those parts of us, then we're not even in the picture.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So becoming centered, to be the observer of the parts and to hold space for the parts and to give them their respect. And then to really look back and recognize the times in my life when I didn't have that ability to just have so much compassion.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Powerful. I love that idea about the different parts as well. And, when I'm teaching, even for the negotiating, I talk about that. We all still carry that little girl inside us with those little girl hurts in our life, and being able to find a way to use that, in the negotiating sphere, I say, bring your mama bear, to sort of advocate for that little girl. But I love this idea of being conscious about that in our parenting styles as well. So I can't thank you enough, Katherine. This has been just
so great. Thank you so much, Cindy. Loved it.
For our listeners out there, make sure to check too, like I say, get those resources, your free ebook, check out Katherine's webinar. It will be a game changer for you. And check out her programming as well. She talked about her 90-day parenting reset. That's going in full force now, getting rave reviews. But also just learn more about Katherine Sellery at her website at consciousparentingrevolution.com. So I'm sure you all got loads of value from this episode. As I say, make sure to re-listen to it. Take notes next time so you can just go that layer deeper and deeper every time you hear all of these gorgeous insights to make your relationship with your kids the best they can be and to have you show up as the best version of yourself. And make sure to share it as well with anyone that you think could get some value from this message. And let's face it, who couldn't? This transcends even beyond parenting as well. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure to subscribe to the Art of Feminine Negotiation podcast. Grab your free gifts. Again, I'll post those links for you. And also make sure to join our Women on Purpose community if you haven't. Women on Purpose community under Facebook groups. And that's a wrap for this episode. So until next time, go forth and negotiate your best life on your terms so that you can stop missing out and start getting more of what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom.